Hi, welcome back to part 2 of how to use Illustrator on a basic level. Now, in the true spirit of a professional graphic designer, my work crashed and I didn't save it, so I lost that file that I was working on before. So I've recreated this page. It's pretty similar to what we had before, and I want to just run through stuff. So in the first video, we looked at the pen tool, the shape tools, type tools. We started to look at the selection tools, direct selection tools, and we looked at like tools like the hand tool, where you click on this and you can move around. Incidentally, there's always keyboard shortcuts, which we're going to move on to in later videos. But for example, on the hand tool, you could just press spacebar and move your mouse around. That's like the quick way of getting to the keyboard shortcuts. What I always found as a graphic designer is you just start using it and creating it, using these programs, using these tools without thinking, but like riding a bike in some way. So you just start pressing buttons and keys without actually realizing what you're doing if you're trying to create outlines, for example. So let me share what create outlines is. This is at the moment is a font, but if you go to type and down to create outlines, it turns it from a font into a graphic now. So these are now graphics, and that's really important. This could be a way of when you're sending a file to print to making sure that you don't need to embed the font. You can just select all the fonts and create outlines, and in that way you don't need to worry about the printer not having the correct font, and by default some printer automatically putting a different font in. It just takes out the worry on that element. So at the moment, if I select this A, or the shape A, it selects everything. So I'm going to go to Objects, Ungroup. So that now allows me to select individual parts. And just like earlier when we used the selection tool, you can grab bits and you can move them. Or you can grab sections like the inner side of the inner part of the B and remove it. So you have lots of control, lots of freedom. You can grab sections and start moving them around. So this is going to be a great way of enhancing your work and making it look stronger and even maybe more bespoke, whatever the techniques is you want to look at. So if I was to go back to selecting that particular item, I could use the rotation tool to rotate it, to put it in like so. I can use the scale tool, which is just simply grab the corner. And remember, when you're scaling stuff, if you're just holding the mouse, it will distort the shape, which might be what you're looking for. But if you want to keep it consistent, you hold down Shift, like so. So let's have a look at the gradient tool now. So let's load up the gradient box. I've got a few things open down here. Let's just move them around here. So if anything's ever missing, you can't quite find it, you must go to Windows and you can come down to it. And I can select gradient. And here's my gradient tool, which is out. So by default, it's set up to white to black. So if I click on this one here, click on there, it adds a gradient. The way in which you can change the colors and adapt those colors is by simply grabbing a color swatch and bringing it in, like so. At that point, you can start to move and adjust elements so you can have the gradient exactly where you want it to be. Oh, I accidentally brought in an extra one there by mistake. So if I click on that, I can pull it out to get rid of it. So you can bring things in, and if you think it's not quite right, pull it out, like so. And you can explore and experiment with this as you want to, but you can change the angle of the gradient, you can change the type of gradient, and so on. So you can have like lots of freedom, like always. You can even double click and you can tweak the colors if you know your CMYK reference point. So cyan, magenta, yellow, and K. So black is a key color. That's why it's referred to as K. And often black is used and mixed into many colors. So K represents black being a key color. You can put in your information there. There's other ways to add to this and to add more stuff, but like they're the basics. So let's just focus on that part to get you moving forward on there. You could also, if you play around with your colors by using a swatch, by using by using a swatch. So here's the default color swatches, and it's always good to know that wherever there's a little triangle, there's more options available. So if you click on here, you get presented with a whole range of new swatches you can load up. Can you get ice cream colors in there, like so? And if you really wanted to, you could go and download more. Completely up to you. But the swatches are really useful to know about. There's also a way of sampling colors, which is really handy. For example, many of my students will do some research into an artist. We might try and do a translation where we directly try to recreate that to learn the production methods. And you could bring in a piece. So this is a piece that I've done before. And it's about a local area where I live in Portsmouth, and it's about Canoe Lake, in which people often go to have ice creams, but there's also swans on the lake. So I tried to create this piece, which is got a bit of a double meaning. Well, anyway, let's just say you've brought in a piece of work and you want to sample those colours. A good way of doing it would be this. So I'm just putting some boxes here. This isn't actually to sample the colours, it's just so I can log these colours in a second. But if I grab that box there, use the eyedropper and come into here, it will sample that colour. So click the next one, sample away. And this is always a nice way of getting the tones of colour on the page. And this could represent your swatches. And what would be even better is now to grab those colours and put them directly into the swatch so that they will stay there. And then you can get rid of the original, but you've got the colours now logged here for you to work with. So that's kind of a handy tool, important tool. So where are we up to? We've looked at scale, rotate, and eyedrop. Oh look, I just did a keyboard online. I just did a keyboard shortcut. So to copy something, you have it selected. You go Command C to copy, Command V to paste. Or you can click on that, click on the Option key, and you can see there that a little white arrow appears representing that it's copying the work. Okay, so let's have a look at some new tools now, some alignment tools and the Pathfinder tool, like so. So the Pathfinder tool is a really important tool, really useful tool. So I've got my Pathfinder open here. You'll probably find it in here by default. And remember, if anything's missing, go up there and you can find it all in here. And there's Pathfinder there. So what the Pathfinder does is it takes the shapes you've got selected. So you could select a shape one. I could hold down Shift to select the second shape and hold Shift again to select the third shape. Or I could have drawn a box over all of them. And we can get all of these shapes and turn them into, for example, one shape. Or if I go Command Z to go back, I can have another go at that. I can use this divide tool, which is really useful. So I've clicked on that. It looks like nothing's happened. But now if I use the selection tool, I can get in there and I can move things around in different sections. Like in there, I should be able to go up that and move that around like so. So you have lots of freedom and lots of controls, and these are really important. If you're designing a logo, it's important that when you've got it ready, however you've constructed it, your many shapes perhaps, you can then select the one shape and turn it into, select all the shapes, turn it into one shape. That's important. So the next tool I'm going to show you is the alignment tool. So let's just show you how that can work. So I'm going to just put on the page a load of squares, like so. I'm going to select them all. Now, the beauty of the alignment tool is it's over here on the right, but when you've got things selected, remember at the top always changes to give you those functions. So up here, the alignment tool works in a variety of ways. You could align it like vertically to the top, which is really handy. Also, great function here, there's the distribution center. So it puts them all evenly spread in the middle, like so. You could then also use this tool in a different way with like the blend tool. So let's do another version of that. I'll put one here, one over here. Grab them both. Objects, blend, and make. And it puts in a blend of them. Now it remembers what I last did, the amount I last did, so that's why it's got that amount. So if I go back to blend, and this time I select blend options, and I always would recommend selecting preview so you get a preview of what's happening. I'm going to go to steps here, and I'm going to reduce that down to say, let's try 8. And there you go, it puts in 8, or you can put in 5 or whatever it is you're looking to create. Oh, not 55, 5, and like so. So this is cool. Now I could grab one and I could change the color of that, and it will do a gradual transition across to black. But you can't actually change the one shape if you want to at this point. So the way you would do that and this is a kind of a similar function throughout these sort of tools, is once you've made the changes to your artwork, you can click on expand, and then they become individual shapes again, in which you can move, or you can just change the color, whatever you want to do. So you have lots of control. The way this is so good is that it will give you the freedom to create lots of shapes really quickly. So if I just do a quick version of this, so I've got all of those, I just distribute them. Oops, didn't have them all selected. Distribute them, group them, put some down the bottom here, and if I use the same function, the blend mode will put in them that way. So you can very quickly create a unique pattern that would appear to have taken a long time to construct. Because you're creating it with the correct tools, you're doing it really quick. Okay, so that's the Pathfinder tool and the alignment tools. Really useful. Obviously, there's more you can do with those, but we're just looking at the basics, what we're looking at. Oh, and I've also moved on to the blend tool there. Okay, so there's loads of like little functions and buttons you can press, and we're going to sort of come onto these in more detail at a later time. But I'm just going to show you some fun kind of warp tools that I guess I personally don't use an awful lot on here, but they are kind of useful and fun to look at. So it's a good place to begin. So if I click on here, click and hold to fly, it pops out, and there's loads of little tools like the twirl tool. Oh, section must be outlined already. I don't know why not. Like so, and you can change all the shapes and so on. Try again. Like so, and you can double click. And remember that double click function. Many of these tools you can double click and it brings up the options for it. And you can change the twirl rate and whatever you're doing. You can build things out. So one of those kind of tools in Illustrator that's important to know. I don't know how important it is for me personally to use. I don't feel like I've ever used it directly for a client or whatever. But it's a fun tool and it's interesting. Thank you.